Hello, I hope your day is going well. I'm very lucky today to be joined by Paul Jamieson, who is the sales director for 20EA. Paul, thank you for coming on today.
Hi, Chris. Hey, all good?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. So we've timed this really well because I understand you've just released your market insights on what's happening in the estate agency market at the moment. So without further ado, what's going on?
Yeah. So we've this is hot off the press. So we've literally been looking at this week. So all the data I'm about to show you is kind of to the end of May. So the first 5 months of the year, and I think in summary, like the market is just so resilient. I know people say it all the time, but it's remarkable when you consider what's going on with interest rates, all the uncertainty, election just announced. The market is still doing really well. So if I just kind of run through some of the stats we picked up on the sales side, and I have scribbled these down because my memory is not the best. So if we look at new instructions, so we measure that, we kind of classify that as supply, so the number of stock, the amount of stock coming to the market. So supply is up 13% on last year. So there's plenty of properties coming to market, but not too many. So there's should be lots of choice there for buyers at the minute, and definitely more. So as an agency, you should be seeing more stock kind of coming onto the market this year. And demand, which we measure by the number of sales agreed. And the reason we do that is obviously there's a massive lag rate waiting for land registry completion timescales. They're massively behind. So we measure kind of demand as sale agreed because it's a kind of real time indication of what's happening in the market without having to wait 4 or 5 months for land registry. So that's up a massive 17%. So the market is flying really. Like so, and these figures are up on 2019 even, which is kind of the last normal year when, I mean, interest rates were at 0.5% or 0.75%. So the market is doing fine. I mean, fall-throughs are 5% down on last year, which is pretty good. One area where we are seeing kind of a high number of stats compared to last year is price reductions. So price reductions are 7% up on last year. And I think the reason why is there's still properties coming to the market at too high a price. So I think some vendors and potentially some agents aren't advising the property, but there's still some stock coming on too high. To kind of highlight that, 38% of concluded listings this year, so actual stuff that's gone on to exchange and complete, have had price reductions. So the vast majority, well, a high proportion of properties are having to have price reductions to actually kind of exchange. And yeah, so price reductions is on the way up. We've also noticed a difference though in the time to sell. So we measure that in the days it takes from new instruction to sale agreed. So that was about 63 days last year. That's kind of crept up to 74 days. So it's taking good 2.5 months to actually secure an offer. So I think it is still hard work to kind of work your buyers and get good, decent offers in. And obviously the time to complete, which is the sales progression piece and all this fun stuff, that's not really changed. So that's still pretty bad, to be honest. So we're still seeing that take about 124 days. So it's not really moved too much. But yeah, instruction prices are still on the rise, which links back to probably my first point. I think the average instruction price at the minute is £437,000, which is a lot higher than actually kind of completion prices. So there is still that kind of gap between what a price is coming on for and what it actually sells for. But in summary, pretty good start to the year, I think, in sales. I mean, we're nearly halfway through. Interestingly, we kind of also now measure like the difference between kind of traditional agents, self-employed agents, online agents. The self-employed agents, I know you work with a lot of them, they're nearly 2% now of the entire market based on the data we have. Just to put that in perspective, that's bigger than Purple Bricks and William H. Brown, who are the kind of largest single brands in the UK. So collectively, with these self-employed models, they're making a real difference, and they're growing quicker than any other type of model, and kind of many others are shrinking, to be honest. So yeah, lots of interesting stats around that. Obviously, I think one interesting thing for estate agents listening to this, it's all well and good me talking about averages in the whole of the UK. But to be frank, your client, that's meaningless to your clients. What I would advise agents is to really get to grips with these figures in your local town, in your local market. And if the agents that are doing that successfully and I'm not, this isn't a pitch for 20A. We have the solutions, but there's plenty of data providers where you can get this data and free resources online. If you're talking about this kind of stuff, passing on this kind of good news, positive message, you will become the kind of go-to agent because you'll be trusted and all these things we know. So it's interesting to see what the national picture is, but I'd encourage you to really delve into the detail in your localities and get the message out really.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's a sunnier outlook than I was expecting, if I'm brutally honest, because you'd have thought from an outsider's perspective looking in, high interest rates, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, that's not a very good scheme. You've got the election coming up very shortly as well, which we're going to delve into later on. You've completely gone against what I've said on an email about 3 days ago, so we'll go into that in some detail. So why do you think the market is so resilient? Is it the fact that people are just kind of very realistic about what the market is today and they think I'm going to live here for the next 20, 30 years? Does it matter if I buy today or tomorrow? Why where do you think this resilience comes from?
Yeah, I think if you look back over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been so many things happening. You go all the way back to COVID, which is just obviously a complete freak event. You've had bad news stories with rising interest rates, cost of living crisis, war in Ukraine, and I think there's a general sentiment that people are just like, right, I can't wait forever. Like I've got to get on with my lives, and there's always those people that need to move, as we know. And I think people are just almost fed up and just thinking, actually, let's just get on with this. We need to move. Let's do it. And I think we're seeing that to some extent. You mentioned the election, so again, we can perhaps touch on this now. I think the general consensus is an election all kind of stalls the property market. And the reason, and I think in the past that is actually true. So if you think of past elections, I think people want to wait to see who's going to be in government, what changes that might mean to them, whether that will affect the property market. Is the market going to crash as a result of that? And I think people kind of, when there's uncertainty, they do nothing, so they kind of stall. And I think we've seen in the past that happens. I think why this year is different is, I mean, it's a snap election. It's been called kind of by surprise and taken a lot of people by surprise. And it's only in a few weeks. There's not been too much time to really think about it. And I think actually that's good for us as estate agents or as an industry, because I think if it's really drawn out over 3, 4, 5 months even, I think you get that level of uncertainty. Whereas I think because it's such a short lead up time, I think again people are just getting on with it and thinking it doesn't matter. And I think without getting political, I think the result is probably a foregone conclusion, and I think that probably helps in the fact that people probably know what's going to happen. A lot of people perhaps want to change, and again, that probably helps people's psyche when they're thinking of moving. But I don't know what you think.
Well, you're throwing a spanner in the works because I sent an email out to my database on Friday last week, and I did a podcast, an election special, which came out on Friday last week as well, which coincided with the email going out, basically saying this is what's happened over the last elections. It went to Boris and Theresa and then David Cameron before then. So whatever the last how many years that was, 10 years or so going back effectively, and look at all the, you'd have been proud, all the stats about what the market had done, what the lack of instructions, fall through rates, all this sort of data on the back end of it.
Yeah.
And this year, and I've done all that, and it's completely wrong. So
And to be honest, I think in previous elections, I think what you've done is right and it's true. But I mean, and we are talking about I mean, it's only just been announced, so this could still all change, and
even
it
a broken clock is right twice a day.
But like what we've done, like since it was announced, we've had 2 full weeks of data, and what we've seen is that actually new instructions are up about 3 or 4% on last year, and sales agreed are up 9%. So again, kind of similar to what I've described, there's still more stock and more sales being agreed than last year. And perhaps more interestingly, sales agreed, so the demand that actually offers getting accepted is about 2.5% up on 2019. Amazing. When we said the bang rate was 0.75% then, and without all this interest rate chaos. So the data at the moment points to actually it's business as usual, but you never know.
There's still time
to
to write.
A short time in politics, so it could all change, and it could be me looking embarrassed.
Yeah, there we go. I doubt it, but there we go. We'll live to see. So Thinking about that in mind, I think, I did start in my defense. I did start the podcast by saying exactly what you said, that Richie has done us a really good favor here by saying, look, the election is coming up. It's a month's time sort of thing. There wasn't much time to panic. Whereas historically, it's 2 months' time, 3 months' time, 4 months' time. And it kind of gives time for momentum being to take out the market and kind of
Yeah.
to grind to halt. Whereas I think this time, done us a solid and actually just done it quite quickly. Right, it's in a month's time, get your papers in and away we go, sort of thing. I'd like to have a chat with you about price reductions, if that's okay. So something you've
Yeah.
mentioned there is on the initial statistics for this year compared to last year is, 13% supply and 17% under offer, but price reduction was 7% up. Um, do you think that does that point towards agents overvaluing from day one, number one? And I also saw that, or I'd get the feeling that they're actually taking a fairly decent amount of time before they drop the price down. So it isn't like it's a case of it comes on the market for too much money and by 3 weeks' time the price is dropping. It's more of a case of it comes on the market on day one, overpriced, and then a month or two down the line, eventually a price reduction kicks in. Is that what you're kind of seeing?
Yeah, we can actually track kind of overvaluing. So we have a report which is a little bit complicated, but essentially what we do is we link we look at a property instruction and link that to our AVM value, so our automated valuation model. Whatever you think about AVMs, like we use the same logic for every property, so it kind of rings true. And what we then do is look at the point of valuation. Do we think the agent has overvalued it or undervalued it? And when I look on that report in virtually every town or city, um, every, the majority of agents are overvaluing. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily always a bad thing, but what tends to happen if you're severely overvaluing, it does exactly that. It's going to stick on the market. It's not going to gather interest, and we are noticing actually. I think the fact that the time to sell has gone up so significantly, it's taking 2.5 months to agree to sale, kind of alludes to your point just there. I think the time before it gets a price reduction is increasing, and it's kind of just staying available for longer. Interesting, we see that it's quite rare, but I see so in some towns, you can noticeably see where an agent's got a completely opposite pricing strategy to that. So where most of the report shows an agent overvaluing, you occasionally get an agent that's undervaluing, and it might be by 3-4%, and it looks kind of out of place. What we then do is we match when the property actually completes, we match the land registry completion price and match it back to the original listing price. And what tends to happen is these agents that are overvaluing significantly have to then do massive price reductions to actually sell the property. And when they actually sell it, they're quite often underselling it. So the vendor's getting less for their property than what it's worth. Sometimes the agents that undervalue at the start, that's a deliberate pricing strategy to gather lots of buyer interest, perhaps do open days. Now, it depends on the market you're in, but what we tend to find is then actually that sparks a bidding war, and actually the price, rather than reduce the price, they're getting offers much higher than the original listing price, and that quite often will sell above what the property is worth. So it's really interesting. It's a really interesting topic. It's really interesting data because lots of agents talk about this anecdotally. It's not like overvaluing has been around forever and it's always going to be. But again, there are ways now where you can combat that. So if you're an agent you're constantly coming up against competitors that are doing this and it's really frustrating, then there are tools out there to kind of combat that, and you can talk and share and actually demonstrate, look, this is what's happening with the competitor you're speaking to or the other agent that's value your property, they're going to undersell your property. So we talked about fees earlier. The reason I'm 2%, sir, is because actually I will get you a higher price. And rather than just saying that, you can actually prove it with data.
So I'm gonna put you in a valuer's chair if that's okay. So I'm gonna put you in someone's
Yeah.
nice soft sofa in their living room, and you're talking to Mrs. Miggins or whatever it might be, and she has had an estate agent round to value her property at £250,000, and you're thinking to yourself, not in a million years is Mrs. Miggins's bungalow worth £250,000. What data would you be going to as kind of your go-to to kind of go, look, Mrs. Miggins, it's not 250, it's more like 240, for example. What would be your go-to choices there?
Yeah, so we again just I full disclosure, I've never been an estate agent, I've never valued a property. So before everyone starts shouting at me, I've never done it. So But we as a business at 20A, we've actually built a product now without again turning this into a sales pitch. But we've built a product called Spotlight for exactly this scenario. And what it allows you to do is produce a kind of PDF report of your performance and your agent stats over the last 12 months, which you can kind of print off in the living room and talk to Mrs. Miggins and describe this. And essentially what it does, it shows the vendor how many properties you're listing or selling in that area. Now, you might not be number one, you might even not be in the top five. You might be, or you might be 10th largest agent in there. Doesn't really matter. But what you can do is you can demonstrate, we can show your position in the market in terms of your market share. But more importantly, what we can actually show is how many properties you actually go on to sell. So we include your sales agreed ratio. So if you can show Mrs. Mings that, look, we're agreeing sales on 80% of properties, the average in the town is only 60%. So if you're serious about selling the property, you want to be using me rather than these other agents. The other thing we can show is the price achieved, what we call PIPA, the percentage of initial price achieved. Again, if you can demonstrate that you're achieving 99%, 100%, 101% of asking price, you're kind of proving that you're getting the results. And again, we can show the average for the other agents in town. And we can go on to speed of sale as well. And you should demonstrate that you're selling properties 10 days, 20 days quicker than the average. So that's it. Again, this only works if you're a good agent, and because the stats don't lie. If you're a bad agent, then you probably can't use this product that we've got. But that paints a picture and tells a story, and hopefully kind of gets through to the vendor and shows them again. I'll without boring everyone, like it comes to data. If you can use the data to back up this stuff, you get so much more credibility than just saying it. Which because unfortunately every agent says they're the best, they're the biggest, they're the quickest. And actually, if there's no data to disprove that, then why you can't blame the vendor for believing it.
And as a small sort of throwaway tip for anyone listening in thinking, yeah, you know, I want to get my percentages and my percentage of asking price and my time agreed and whatever else it may be, I'd always break that down to the lowest common denominator, and that is going to be pounds and pence. So it's all well and good to sit in front of somebody and say, you know, we'll get you 2% extra for your home, or we'll save you 2%, or whatever the number is. Break that 2% into, we will save you £10,000. Because people don't understand 2%. People are generally quite thick in the grand scheme of things. I don't understand 2%, but I understand £10,000. So I'd always break that down.
Completely is a really good point. So yeah, you're selling a 500 grand property and you get 2% more of the industry price. That's your 10 grand, and that's why I'm 2% and the others are 1%, because actually I'm going to achieve more of your price, and you're still better off. And yeah, I mean, lots of agents will be doing this already, but if you're not, like, it's a really good habit to get into.
So every estate agent I'm imagining who's listening into this could do with some more listings. That's generally, you've never got enough. You've got 100, you want 101 or whatever it may be. What are some of the best ways that estate agents can leverage data to find their next instruction or instructions?
Yeah, so I perhaps touched on it already. I think just becoming that local expert and immersing yourself in the local community over the long term, it just works. So all the data I've provided, you can be using in market updates and targeting people, joining the kind of social media groups, the community groups, doing all the kind of local community fairs, that kind of stuff. So just immersing yourself in the local community, I think is a simple one. The second area is look inside your existing CRM system. So there is absolute gold dust within an agent's CRM system, and I speak to agents about this all the time, like every week. And I think the issue for a lot of agents is where to begin. If you've been trading for 20, 30, 40 years, you might have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of contacts within your CRM system, which I think is overwhelming. And if you haven't got a kind of contact center type resource, you can just call them all. It's hard to know where to begin. But there are clever things you can do. So again, just to relate that back to what 20EA do in my business, We have a product called Match, which can screen your entire CRM database. So imagine you've got 100,000 contacts in there that you've picked up over the last 20 years. We can screen that on a daily basis and highlight any property within your CRM that's currently on the market. So straight away, and you would have no way of doing this unless you were doing it manually by checking every portal listing and matching it back, which no one's ever going to have the time to do. So, and the beauty of that is you've already got their contact details, because you will have transacted, even if it's just a buying inquiry from 17 years ago, or a past valuation you did 6 years ago. You'll already have their phone number and email address. You don't necessarily need to spend any money on lead gen, on kind of direct mail. So we can highlight, and not only that, we can tell you which agent it's on with, give you a full listing history, what price it's on with, whether it's just over a fall through or withdrawal. So you can do some really clever stuff now with your CRM, and that is like your daily call list. You should be, if I knew there's 20 fall throughs within my CRM and I know their phone number and email, I don't need to worry about fancy prospecting tools and systems because I've already got their details. So there'll be absolute gold dust in most agent CRMs, and there's ways you can do that. The other thing we do as a business is we're utilizing AI. So we have a predictive model called Forecast, which can predict who's likely to come to the market in the next 2 months. And interestingly, I'll throw some more kind of stats at you, because this is, again, something else we've looked at recently. So you've probably heard that it's a stat that's been flying around for years and years, that about 50% of properties sell with a second agent, or something like that.
That one, yeah.
I still don't know where that came from. It's something I actually used to use in my previous role, and since joining 20EA, we've completely debunked that. It's complete rubbish. We actually track every instruction coming to market, and we've just refreshed this actually over the last 12 months. So we've looked at every instruction and found out where has it come from. And 82% of instructions that come to market have not previously been on the market, which sounds a bit stupid, but we call that off market. So if in my town 100 instructions come on, 82 of them will not have been on the market. And out of those 82%, 69% haven't been on the market for at least 5 years. So a lot of the properties coming to market are people that have not sold their house for a long time. And if they've not been active in the market, you might not necessarily be talking to them. Just to let you know where the other 18%, so about 9% is through agent switching. So property was currently instructed with agent A, they've overvalued it, not sold it, so they switched to another agent. And I'd say this is what a vast majority of agents concentrate on. So this 9%, and we're guilty of this. We have our own on-market prospecting solution, and I'm not saying you don't do it. And these again are averages. So some agents won't be taking any instructions off an agent because they're not doing anything. So, and some agents might be getting double. They might be getting 20% of their instructions because they're actually really good at it and targeting. But the averages don't lie. So the problem I have with on-market prospecting now, without completely shooting myself in the foot, is it's such a saturated market now. We are one of probably 10 providers that can do this now, and I'm hearing stories of vendors that are getting 8 letters on the same day because they've just reached a trigger point, and all the 10 providers sending letters, sometimes with the same content, and it actually does more harm than good now, I think. So it's interesting that it's a very small part of the market. If you're wondering if my maths is off, the other 8-9% is actually multi-listings. So when a property comes on, it's actually kind of multi-listed, which is more of a London phenomenon, to be honest. So we see it a lot in London, less outside of London. And in kind of summary, where I'm getting to is what you need to do is focus more of your marketing efforts and spend on this 82%. Because in the long term, if you're the only local agent talking to these people in this 80% market and sending them really useful content, market updates every quarter in your local community, and none of your competitors are, because they're all scrapping around the listings that are currently on the market, over time that kind of your brand awareness and the number of instructions coming to the market will just pay dividends. And again, the reason why this hasn't been done is probably, if you looked at this 8 years ago, the only way you could target people in this bracket were if you blanket dropped a town, because how do you know who's about to put the property market? You didn't know. But the problem with that is it's just a huge cost, and the majority of that is wasted because most people aren't looking to move. But again, with AI and the kind of stuff we're doing, we can actually identify who these people are, who these people like to move. So you can focus less spend on this group of people. And we're never going to get it 100% right, but our top 10% model is predicting about 55% in the instructions now. So we're kind of giving the tools to fish in the right pond. Whether they instruct you still depends on what you're saying to them, how often you're contacting them, is your brand strong in the local area. So there's still these kind of factors at play, but we're giving you a better chance of success by being able to talk to the right people. So I think, yeah, in summary, that's what I'd be looking at your CRM system. I'd be looking at how do I identify who's about to come to market before they do, and just work on your local market content.
And what's some of the marketing material you find is the most effective? So let's say, for example, the clever AI bot thing highlights as the number one new road is most likely to come on the market because they bought a sofa 6 years ago and they haven't changed their car for 2 weeks. So that
Yeah.
highlights that is going to come on the market very shortly. What's the best way of an agent approaching that to give themselves the best possible chance of being instructed on that in the coming weeks, months when they actually do decide to go on the market?
So I find everyone's interested in kind of property prices. Even if people aren't selling, they're interested in what's happening in the market. So just using good, reliable local market stats, the stuff that I talked about at the start, just doing that in your local town, I find works the best, because it's the stuff I really hate is the stuff that I get through the door all the time, which is we're valuing on your street next week or in your area, give us a call. And I know I know it's rubbish. I know it's just I think most people know that's rubbish. Whereas if I got a letter through the door, not asking for evaluation, not asking for any business, but just wanted to introduce my business. This is what's happening in the local property market. This is what's happening to rents and prices. This is what's happening to interest rates and how we're finding that's affecting our customers. Just interesting stuff about the market, about property prices, about their house. It could be anything. And yeah, I just think that again, it comes back to trust. That you build so much more credibility by doing that than the kind of standard kind of dross you get, to be frank, through
Yeah.
the door from a lot of agents.
Yep. It goes back to kind of that sort of digital mayor, as Chris Watkins would say.
Yeah, yeah, and for any agents that want to know how to speak to Chris Watkins, because he can tell you in 10 minutes exactly what you should be doing.
There you go. He was on the podcast, but it's been recorded last week. It'll be coming out very soon. So
Yeah.
shameless plug in there. So I'm very passionate about estate agents having a core area and having a core patch of their business, and not going, I'm the estate agent for Hampshire, Surrey, and Sussex, and whatever else it might be, and going, I want to have a core area within my town that is going to be my area that I'm going to saturate. What are some of the key metrics that an estate agent should look at when they're looking to choose that core area? So obviously they've got their entire town, for example, that might be 100,000 households. So how would you look at the stats and look at the figures to go, actually, this little corner over here, that's the one for me?
Yeah. So I think you need to know, I think you need to, before you kind of perhaps tackle that exercise, understand what your brand is and what you stand for. So and to kind of put that in perspective, I can identify the properties we think are likely to instruct in the next 2 months. However, just because they're likely to come to market doesn't mean they're the right property for your brand. So as an example, a simple example, if a £2 million house is coming on the market, that might be more a Savills property than a Purple Bricks property, without picking on brands.
You said it.
But so I think you need to understand what your core market is, and I know again, without another plug for some kind of friend of ours, or he uses our data. So Ian Macbeth at Avocado Property, I know Avocado Property is seen as his kind of ethic, or his aim as a business is to move families. So he very much sees himself as someone that moves the people aged kind of 25 to 45 who have young families and who are kind of moving up the ladder. That's his kind of niche of the market. And I think once you know that, or you know what type of properties or price bands you're selling, you can then find those people, find similar properties and similar areas. So I think you need to first of all and fully understand, because it's very rare for an agent to cover the bottom end, the middle end, and the top end of the market. It's very hard to do that because your marketing message has to be so different to each of those. So once you've worked out which part of the market you're in, go and find that. And again, there's tools available that they're everywhere with us, other providers, and kind of on the open market. And I think this kind of mirrors what you're saying. I would start small. Start on your core area. Start where you've got the most listings, you've had the most sales. Boards breeds boards. Try and work in areas where you're strong first. Really build up that brand awareness, that trust, and then once you've kind of mastered that area, then identify areas and kind of tag along and kind of grow organically. But you're completely right. I've seen so many agents that like come to us. They might even be opening a new business, and they go, right, we want postcodes for the whole of Surrey. I was like, well, first of all, it'll cost you a lot of money, and you're not going to be able to service that data or do anything with it. And yeah, it's you've got to start small and branch out.
I think as well, the trap that lots of agents fall into is they kind of swim against the tide. And what I mean by that is that, let's say, for example, you have a demographic you want to go for. Let's say you want to go for the upper end of the market, but actually after 6 months, a year's time, all the properties you bring on the market are all sort of more Ian Macbeth and more sort of 3-bed semis and 4-bed detached sort of thing.
Yeah,
It's really hard to swim against that tide and kind of push your marketing message towards the higher end. At the point where you just go, accept it and go, actually, I'm now a middle end market. Who knew?
yeah,
That's actually where I'm getting the most traction. Everyone likes me. Everyone loves what I do. Therefore, why swim against the tide and try and push yourself into being an upper end market if you're not being pulled in that direction? You're far better off just going, actually, it is what it
yeah.
is. I'm now that middle market agent. Whether I want to be that or not, that's where I am.
And we do lots on this actually. So because there's a difference between kind of you might have in your town, you could have lots of properties coming to market, but most agencies get paid on completion and when properties actually exchange. So we did some analysis for an agent, and actually they were taking on they were winning loads of instructions, but a lot of it was kind of leasehold flats. And when we actually analyzed what properties went on to exchange, they were bottom of the list by a long way. Like only about 22% of these types of property were actually completing. So they're putting all their spend and all their effort into winning the instruction, into servicing these clients, knowing that only 1 in 5 are actually going to pay them. So we said, actually, I can't remember the stats exactly, but let's say it was semi-detached 3-bed houses, which there's a lot less of them, but they had a 70% chance of completing. It might be a better tactic to concentrate on marketing to those type of properties, knowing that they're going to go through. And again, the data's out there. If you're really serious about a serious business owner, you can find out all this and actually do some really clever stuff to actually take on properties that you know are actually going to complete and kind of pay you.
Well, it's been very good. I mean, I've been my pen's been scribbling away in the background. I've got a whole page worth of notes in the background. So thank you so much for coming on today and dropping your wisdom and completely proving me wrong with regard to the election. Obviously, still 2 weeks to go, as you say. Thank you so much for coming on today. If anyone wants to get hold of you to chat more about 20EA, because there's a huge amount of information you can help agents with, how do they get
Yeah.
hold of you?
So my mobile is probably the best. I'm happy to give that away. So it's 07912 696 840. Or yeah, my email address is paul.jamieson@20ea.co.uk. And yeah, or visit our website, have a look, and another member of the team can help you out as well.
Cool, amazing. We'll have to have you on in the future. We'll have to have you on in 6 months' time, 3 months'
Yeah,
time, whatever it may
we'll
be.
do a post-election edition and see if I was right.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do a wager on that one. That sounds like a good bet. Good. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Pleasure.
Thank you.